very broadly talking about audio UX, it is any type of auditory feedback that you might get for whatever action that you have taken up, right? It's in audio UX, it's very important for you to give a feedback to your user, not just in terms of successful raha ya nahi raha, but also in terms of visually maybe of how they can proceed after that, right? So अगर आपने Google Pay में देखा हो, so after that voice that comes after any successful transaction, it also has like a tick mark sign, right, which
Yeah.
allows you to understand कि अच्छा ठीक है, now the transaction is over, now I can move forward. So any sort of an audio UX has to go hand in hand with the visual feedback. I think you also mentioned a good point कि it is for people who might be I do not know what the politically correct term over here is कि handicapped या challenged या whatever it is, okay,
Special.
but it is also to make sure कि whatever feedback that we are giving to the users is widely accessible for the general population, because something that you learn in psychology and also while doing UX research is that you cannot cater to each and every person that you encounter in your life, right? But something that you can
True.
do is create solutions that can massively be applied to people, right, or largely be applied to people. So that was the intent with audio UX as well. So I work as a UX researcher and UX writer at Better Place. So Better Place, what it basically does, it's an end-to-end service for all blue and gray collar employees. So basically, from the point a blue collar employee is hired to the point that they're verified, all of their information is verified, to their payroll is being calculated and given to them. Right, that entire process or ecosystem, that is something that is catered to by Apna Better Place. Yeah. And they are vastly just targeting the blue collar employee, and they're also in the list for the next billion users wala pura concept. And I think, frankly, it's a population that's largely forgotten about, right? When you see so many apps and everything, it's very easy for us to use because we have been dealing with technology since वो छोटा सा अपना Samsung Galaxy आया था,
Yeah.
right? So we're used to it like that. But a lot of people that I particularly encounter with in better at Better Place are generally tier 3 population, right? The ones who are not that educated and not that well familiarized with technology. So it's very important for us to design solutions that help them understand, most importantly, कि क्या चल रहा है, because every other tier 1 tier 2 cities education background, they'll be able to get it just as easily.
Yeah, so that's great. I mean, because when people talk about UX design or anything, they always think about these whole flashy design, and they always think about mostly tier 1 cities, right? How
Hmm.
can we push technology? How can we bring better designs? But a lot of people don't really talk about tier 2, tier 3 cities, and I've also not come across a lot of like. I work at a design studio, right? So I've also not come across a lot of what do you say projects
Hmm.
where we are catering to these people. So it's really
Hmm.
great hearing that you're actually working for them. And so, how does audio UX come into play with all of this? I mean, tier 2, tier 3 city people. Yeah.
Okay. So we have an entirely different product by the name of Attend, where in what happens is that we, जो भी हमारे all the clients that we have, we provide them with a tablet where their attendance is marked via facial recognition, right? So one of the biggest problems that we were currently facing was the blue collar employees. They were coming in, they were marking their attendance, but because they are in such a rush to either log in and start their work or to log out and just get the fuck out of there, is that they were not actually able to wait for the feedback, right? And a lot of times the feedback also was, the visual screens were also worked on because it was a little ambiguous. The visuals are very small for the users to understand if they have been logged in successfully or not, right? So that is why the entire approach of audio cues came in, because we wanted to make sure that even if the person is leaving, even if he's in a rush, he can hear in her Chris attendance mark successfully, right? So
Okay.
that at the back of the mind, he doesn't have to worry about it. Because for a tier 3 person, it is very, very important for them to take care of whatever money is coming in at the end of the month. That has to be
That's
secured
true.
primarily, right? So they would mark attendance multiple times just to ensure कि हाँ, okay, attendance हो गया है, right? But what was happening at the back end of it was that the supervisor or whoever the site manager was, he had to regularize that particular person's attendance like 2 3 times because that person had marked their attendance so many times just to be sure. right? So we wanted to decrease that load for the site supervisors as well, and also make a more seamless feedback flow for the
Hmm.
blue collar employees.
I mean, we're making their lives easier. That would like help them so much more. In our office also, we have the biometric scanners, and a lot of us also just sign in multiple times because we can't hear the actual this
Hmm.
thing, right? The screens are like really tiny, and when you click on it,
Huh.
there's a small tick, and you don't really hear anything. So it's happened multiple times that even with me that I've marked my attendance at least twice, like within 5 minutes interval. Like I'll enter office,
Hmm.
mark my attendance, and then I'm like, wait, did I mark my attendance? I don't remember. I don't remember anything that's
Yeah.
that stood out that I marked my attendance. So then I go and again I mark it. So yeah, so how did you approach this though? Like how did you
Okay.
approach audio UX as a whole thing?
That's a very good question, because I was fairly new to the organization when this need for audio UX came up. So I straight out freaked out for like a day or two because I was feeling very overwhelmed and I was like, shit, I can't do this. I just
Oh.
can't do this. But I think I was also dealing with this entire, okay, you are in a new setup and, just
Hmm.
very overwhelmed at
Yeah.
the beginning of everything. So something that has always helped me work is creating a workflow, or
Hmm.
whatever is going on in my mind, I'll just create an entire workflow, and that is how I go about it. So the first step for me to better understand audio UX, because the only kind of audio that I had listened to was, Yo-Yo Honey saying a stuff like that, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know how this shit works. So I started with creating an entire concept map of what audio UX is, what are its building blocks, what are some things that we have to completely de emphasize. And
Hmm.
uh, this entire journey would also allow me to ask better questions to my product managers and then, in turn, the site supervisors and managers. Right.
Correct.
So I began with concept mapping. So some of the things that I was able to understand was that visuals, as I told you, visuals and audio would have to go
Hmm.
hand in hand. We have to make sure that there are not a lot of sounds involved, there are not a lot of dialogue involved, because these people are largely not that educated. So if we were to include a lot of okay, so when a person is marking their attendance, sometimes they're too close to the camera, too far
Yeah.
away from the camera, right? So currently what's happening is there are a lot of visual error messages as well, right? So
Hmm.
they read that and they then sort of readjust themselves, right? But agar hum yahi pe, we would have included a lot of error messages which were being told to them via voice. You're too
Hmm.
close to the camera, you're too far to the camera, right? So that would have been very very ambiguous for them. And one
Yeah, it would be
of the
kind of
biggest,
confusing.
yeah, very confusing. And one MVP of our MVP बोल रहा था, USP of our product is also
Yeah.
that multiple people can mark attendances at one time.
Oh.
Right. So not everybody would be standing in a straight line. Somebody would be moving, somebody would be talking. So we had to make sure that not a lot of voice and not a lot of audio cues are there to, because that might confuse them. Right.
Yeah. I mean.
So the second thing that we wanted to identify were air cons. So what are air cons? Air cons are basically audio cues in the terms of sounds, not voice. Right. So sound would be something chirpy or like a buzzer sound to say no
Hmm.
or something like that, and voice would be like your or mine. Okay, so
Yeah.
we had to first initially separate here, which one do we want to go ahead with. Right, so we created two different prototypes, one with specifically air cons and one with voice. Now, one of the very important aspects of audio UX is sonic metaphors. Now, what are sonic metaphors? They are basically how can you initiate, or how can you inculcate emotions via voice और इमोशंस via an
Hmm.
audio cue. Okay, तो जैसे आप गूगल पे में जब भी कोई ट्रांजैक्शन सक्सेसफुल होता है, it gives you a very editing chirpy sound, right?
Yeah.
So that automatically lets you know कि okay, something has gone good, something has gone well, I don't
Yeah.
need to give two fucks about this, right? But I haven't encountered this currently in real life में अभी तक तो, but whenever we hear like a loud horn or a buzzer sound or something like that, we know कि अच्छा ठीक है, something is wrong,
Wrong.
something quite hasn't
Yeah.
happened. Okay, so this was implemented very well by Windows when we all of us had those desktops. So जब भी
Hmm.
at the beginning of the startup of the entire monitor and at the end, it had two different sounds with two
Yeah.
different modes, right? The first one at the startup would be chirpy, and then end
Yeah.
में when shut down करे, it would do,
When you shut down
right?
that time, yeah, you get
Yeah,
your.
yeah. So it automatically we don't even realize consciously that this is happening, right? And yet this was like, okay, this is in even my secondary research, this was very eye opening for me.
Hmm.
So we were able to do this entire concept mapping. We were also able to map out that we have to you know um, exclude any heavy graphics to go ahead with, because simple audio cues and the visual feedback would be good enough. Then
Hmm.
combining it with a lot of heavy graphics for them to see, because they're already late enough as they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
they wouldn't want
And
to
also,
see much.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the next was to क्या बोलते हैं, eliminate any heavy text from the
Hmm.
visuals that they were already seeing. Okay, so as to not confuse them furthermore.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that came up in our concept mapping stage. And the next was we dig a little deep. So since Better Place is such a unique product, sometimes it becomes very difficult to find the right competitor, right? The people who are dealing with the exact target population as we are, and then deploying the same kind of solutions, right?
Yeah.
So that was a little difficult, but what we were able to identify through this entire competitor analysis was people were largely using a female voice, especially with an Indian context if given, because that
Hmm.
would help with a sense of familiarity,
Okay.
right?
Why is that?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
because a female voice is in general sweet. Like, just look at yours and look at mine,
wow.
right?
Ouch. I thought my voice was
Yeah.
very nice and soothing.
It is. I was just kidding. So basically, क्या होता है कि if you are also to see it from a social perspective, right?
Hmm.
When our mothers give us any advices, we are like कि अच्छा ठीक है, I might consider it, okay? But जब
Hmm.
dad आ जाते हैं, and when dad starts his entire कि तुम्हारी उम्र में तो मेरे छाले पड़ जाते थे पैर पे
Yeah.
पैदल चल चल के, तो you're at least bothered, right? So
Yeah.
from that perspective, a social perspective as well, a female's voice was something that was being much well received from the
Hmm.
audience. And we also had to give it a bit of an Indian context, right? Because when we talk about Siri ka voice या Alexa ka voice, right? In a US वाला या दूसरा कोई context, what happens is कि the dialect,
Hmm.
right? So that, because with Indian population, so we have clients all over India, right? So if a person
Yeah.
was to say a South Indian name or like a very complicated North Indian name, so जो
It
हमारा
cannot.
target audience है, he just wouldn't be able to understand if his name was being
Yeah.
spoken out a lot. So basically, that was our entire mindset. We wanted to be as holistically involved as we could, and we wanted to make sure that we are catering to our primary audience, right? The ones that
Hmm.
are speaking in Hindi and English, and some. So basically, after creating these prototypes, one big problem that we were facing was the languages. Which languages do we want to go
Yeah.
ahead with, right?
Visual are spread
So
all over, right?
yeah. So, something that actually helped us out a lot. So, something that I particularly did was we had at least 20 different use cases for audio cues itself, right? So, we are like, okay, we cannot have that many audio cues
Yeah.
for our users. So, something that I did was ki for login and logout, used, so this also came in handy because I was a UX writer as well here. So, for audio, sorry, for login and logout, we just used one attendance mark successfully, right? For a person who is facing any sort of a problem, if his face is too near, too far, sunlight is not proper, we directly tell them to anything actionable, right? Because that is a very key part of UX writing as well as audio UX. Something actionable. So we would tell them ki kindly try again, right? So they would then readjust themselves and then try again. And if the user has been terminated, has been suspended, or if their face is just not recognized by our system yet, we would just tell them to kindly contact your supervisor, right?
Okay.
So that is how I was broadly able to classify all of these different use cases in these three simple audio cues.
Okay. So the whole thing just had three audio cues, and
Yes,
visuals to
yes,
go with it.
yes,
Okay.
yes, because we wanted to make sure कि इतना ज़्यादा we don't want to give them audios and visual cues, because we are also dealing with multiple people at once,
Yeah.
right? So that was the biggest challenge, I think, in this entire scenario.
So yeah, I mean that's also, I mean, because there are so many people, right? And everyone's mind works differently. So my question was this key: how do you decide on which tone would send a positive, set a positive impact, or which tone would set a negative impact for them? Because it's a large group, and it's not,
Hmm.
and like even if we're talking about a large group, this large group is spread all over India that too. So everyone has
Hmm.
different mindsets. Everyone has different ideas of
Hmm.
what what is good and what is bad. So how did you all decide on what specifically to use over there and what to come up with over there?
That's a very good question because, and I'll tell you something about Better Place as well. That something that is of utmost importance of Better Place, and like one of the main priorities of our organization is to be kind, is to be empathetic towards the people or the population that not a lot of people actually cater to or speak kindly to, right? Because
Hmm.
even sometimes in my distant relatives, I've seen the way that they behave with waiters and such stuff, right? And it actually
Yeah,
the
it's not good.
yeah, मैं कुछ नहीं छोड़ के जा रहा मरने के बाद इन लोगों के लिए, right? So it was very very important for us to be kind and empathetic when dealing with these populations. So something that in our audio cues also we have made sure that is there is the words kindly and please,
Okay.
right? And
So you all are
rather
using
than
English for the audio cues? Okay.
yeah, I'll tell you
Yeah.
why that as well. Okay, so kindly and please, or rather than going, okay, so this since this is the first MVP that is going to be launched, we did not want to overcomplicate the tech team and their efforts as well. So something that we are currently just going ahead with is the voice, right?
Okay.
In the MVP 2 version, we will combine air cons and auditory feedback, the voices as well. In the
Hmm.
third, we will try to include sonic metaphors,
Okay.
right? So that we are able to test our this entire solution step by step as how it's going, right? So when I
Yeah.
specifically talk about the voice that we are using right now and the English medium, why that is happening, so my initial approach was to first have an internal call with all of our site supervisors, like different
Hmm.
sites, like supervisors and managers, as to how they are rectifying this behavior currently among their employees. कि अगर वो गलत attendance mark करें, so how are they rectifying this? What are the apps that our users are familiar with? So that gives us an idea of how much basic English can they comprehend
Hmm.
within their apps,
Correct.
right? And also, so after our prototypes were made, we also went out to field and then tested out these prototypes. So this that testing was done in Gurgaon, Delhi, and we also went to Bangalore, different sites. Okay, so that gave us a good idea that even so people over there, they do not have like just one single way of marking attendance, right?
Okay.
So if we have a client, so at they are using a Better Place ka platform to mark attendance, then there's a different biometric thing as well, then there's another facial
Oh,
recognition system as well,
so many.
right? too
Wow.
many too many and while these different methods were being used to mark attendance, they were coming in contact with auditory feedback already from
Hmm.
those couple of places where they were already marking
Correct.
attendance. So they were well familiarized with thoda bahut English. They were also well familiarized with air cons and stuff.
Hmm.
Okay, so the prototype that we initially created was, a couple of air con sounds specifically, as well as the voices. So it is like a female Indian voice speaking in English. Okay, Chris attendance marked successfully. Mansi, please try again.
Ah.
Right,
Okay.
just way more politer than I did. Right,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah. They use
so that is
candy and
something.
cheese, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. And something that we were able to identify from our research of at least talking to 40 to 50 people were
Uh,
that the sounds still received a little bit of ambiguous feedback because everybody has a different perception of what sound
hmm.
is. It was a good 66 to 70%, but when we used the voice with them, the female Indian voice, everybody was able to understand what they're saying. And like
Okay.
yeah, and like the feedback that we were getting from our clients was amazing. They were like कि, we love this solution, अभी आप अभी इधर लगा के जाओ, है ना, बाद में आओगे कि नहीं पता नहीं, अभी लगा के जाओ, we need this. And
Oh.
so we also created a little bit of better visual feedback to show them, and something that we were able to understand, so that had been deployed a week before the new visual feedback.
Hmm.
So the so what happens is that every time a new feature is deployed, the supervisors sort of guide the blue collar employees ki iska matlab kya hai, iska matlab kya hai. And the
Yeah.
learning curve of these users is tremendously high because they are interacting with this system on a day to day basis,
Hmm.
right? So
Correct.
this is also something that we were able to identify ki even if it is a little different than what they're used to, they're able to pick it up very quickly because recognition over recall. Right
Hmm.
there was a lot of conditioning happening as well, that they were using it on a regular basis, and all it was a voice that they are familiar with. It is soothing, it
Hmm.
is kind, so they were able to pick it up really quickly. So we are actually in the process of deploying the MVP one right now.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy. Dude. It's
yeah,
amazing.
it's super crazy.